cuts inside Edwards. Bender for Arsenal. Great goal. Boy, was that worth waiting for.
Gardner shoots. It's into the bottom corner. Birmingham are in front.
The first silverware of the season is up for grabs. The League Cup final, Arsenal versus Birmingham City, Sunday at 3 on BBC One, BBC One HD and Radio 5 Live.
Give me an R.
R.
Give me an N.
N.
Give me a D.
D.
What do you get?
Run.
Get ready for Red Nose Day on Friday the 18th of March on
Now on BBC One, the 10 o'clock news with George Alagaya.
Libya's leader vows to crush the rebellion as his country slips further into violence and chaos. Muammar Gaddafi says he would rather die than give up and threatens to unleash more force on the protesters. Tripoli's residents defend their streets as law and order breaks down, but it's a different picture in the east of the country.
So this is Libya, free Libya as these people have it. It is completely free here of Colonel Gaddafi's forces. There are no soldiers here, no representatives of the hated government anywhere near here.
We'll be asking if Libya is now heading for all-out civil war. Also tonight, a devastating earthquake in New Zealand. At least 65 are dead and hundreds trapped in buildings.
You know, the buildings are buildings. The really important thing are the people, and we just don't know if there are people under this rubble. I fear there are.
The billions of taxpayers' cash wasted on defence expenditure. Ministers say it's time to end fantasy contracts. Union anger in America over Republican plans to slash budgets. Is the US heading for a shutdown? And the children's story Enid Blyton wrote but never had published. Could Mr. Tumpy's caravan enthuse a new generation?
On BBC London News, more revelations about the councillor who holds office despite shooting a man in America. And an MI5 officer admits it failed to act on intelligence months before the London bombings.
Good evening. Libya's leader, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, has vowed to crush the popular uprising, threatening a house-to-house search for protesters before they're put to death. In a fiery hour-long speech, he said he would rather be killed than give up power. With law and order breaking down in parts of the country, more resignations, and reports that some troops are switching sides, there are fears tonight of an all-out civil war. The government here has announced plans for an emergency evacuation of British citizens. In a moment, we'll hear from John Lyne, who's managed to get into eastern Libya. But first, this report from Ian Pannell, who's on the country's border with Tunisia.
Their defiance is bewildering. They've been shot at, perhaps even bombed. Hundreds may have died. And yet here, in the heart of Tripoli, they're still ready to take to the streets. What they want is a new government and the chance to earn a decent living. But Colonel Gaddafi seems ready for a fight, to the death if necessary. Today he appeared in the ruins of his old barracks, bombed by America in the 80s, a symbolic site for a speech as long as it was defiant.
I cannot leave the honorable soil of my country. I will die a martyr at the end. As from tomorrow, security should be established through the police and the army. Police and the police should impose security. All roadblocks should be removed tomorrow. Chase them everywhere.
An hour and a quarter later, with darkness falling, he finished as defiant as he's always been. A stage-managed performance unlikely to convince many outside a loyal few. It's impossible to know how many still support the government. Certainly, they've managed a daily appearance in the state media. But the picture emerging is of a government facing more resistance than it's ever known. The so-called People's Hall, home to what passes for Parliament, attacked and burnt. The symbolism of what's happened here is striking. Details of what's happening are hard to come by, but videos and reports from residents suggest a heavy military presence in the capital, with some suburbs virtually closed off, and horrific stories of callous violence.
I'm a medical doctor and I'm working in a hospital and see a lot of people dying in front of me. They enforce us to treat the regime or militia rather than our people. And there's a lot of dead people, and it was a massacre, especially yesterday and day before.
The defections, the deaths and the unrest seem only to have spurred the protests on. And it's unclear that Gaddafi's order for the army and police to take control tomorrow will even be heeded.
Information about what's happening in the country is coming from those fleeing through border crossings like this one here, and a few brave souls trapped inside. And the picture they paint is pretty grim. Tonight there's a curfew, which means no one can come through this crossing, and they're essentially trapped inside their own country, whose leader has now made it pretty clear that he'd rather kill his own people than give them the freedom they crave. Ian Pannell, BBC News, at the Tunisia-Libya border.
Tonight, the eastern